Hi, good morning. Welcome to That Saturday Show. I'm your host, Tom Dent. It's Saturday, February the 11th. This is our 96th episode of That Saturday Show. Couple announcements. That Saturday Show is brought to you by the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice. And our event that we're having tonight for the teenagers, for the high school students, the Valentine's inspired Peace Rock hashtags Peace Rock campaign, and the gathering that's going on tonight. The time has been moved from starting at 5 o'clock. It's been moved to 7 to 9 p.m. here at the Peace Center at 202 Harvard Southeast. Give us a call if you need details about that. As usual, every Saturday, we have our free food distribution in our parking lot that begins at 9 o'clock. And don't forget our Peace Cafe every Thursday from 10 until 3. Homemade organic food, beverages, jam sessions, great conversations with activists. Get to know the Peace Center, get to know what we do. Volunteer, donate, go to our website at abqpeaceandjustice.org. And later on the show, we'll probably have a mix of a bunch of different poetry and poets that we've had on the show before, mixed in with a little music. But right now, all the way from Philadelphia or Bristol, I'm not sure exactly where, with us is Maya Van Rossum. Is that right? Okay. She is the head of the Green Amendment campaign. She's also worked on the Delaware River Watchers for many, many years. And she's an author, she's an environmentalist, she's a lawyer. Welcome to That Saturday Show, Maya.
Thanks so much for having me, Tom. I'm super excited.
Okay, so I'm going to start off with generic questions. What is the Green Amendment? Why are you? I know I've seen that it's been added onto the Constitution in New York, Pennsylvania, and where else? New Jersey,
Montana.
Montana. I should have known that because my sister-in-law lives up there. I should have remembered that. And you want to do that type of work in New Mexico. I found out, I was introduced to you by Elaine Chimayo from our environmental pajola group, Common Ground Rising. And for Maya's information, we have some other environmental groups that are associated with the Peace Center. We have the New Energy Economy, the Rio Grande Sierra Club, and the local chapter of 350.org. So Maya, tell us all about Delaware River Watch and the Green Amendment.
So Green Amendments for the Generations is the organization, and the movement, I call it the Green Amendment movement, which is really a national movement. And the idea is to go the idea is to have added to every single state constitution across our nation, and ultimately to the federal constitution, a constitutional right to a clean, safe, and healthy environment that is respected and protected in the same most powerful way we respect and protect the other fundamental freedoms we hold dear, like the right to free speech and freedom of religion, private property rights, civil rights, right? The right to peaceably assemble. These are all fundamental, essential freedoms that we have here in the United States of America because they are recognized and protected in the Bill of Rights section of our state and federal constitutions. And ultimately, if there is a problem in that these rights have been infringed upon, the ultimate power lies with the people to ensure that these rights are respected by all government officials. Now, if you want to accomplish that highest protection for our environment, like we have those other essential freedoms, not just any language anywhere in the Constitution will do. You have to meet what I have identified as these Green Amendment criteria. But if you meet those criteria, you get that highest recognition and protection for things like the right to clean water, clean air, healthy soils, a stable climate, healthy environment, thriving ecosystems, which is, I think we can all agree, powerful and important.
Really? We're getting more and more young people involved with the Peace Center, and my daughter is 17 and in high school, and I asked her, what is the most pressing issue for kids your age? And they go, well, it's climate change. We want to survive.
Yeah, and you know, the one of the beautiful things about a green amendment, and particularly the language that has been put forth here in the state of New Mexico, is that it recognizes the environmental rights of all people, and that mandates that these rights be protected equitably for all people, regardless of race, ethnicity, tribal membership status, socioeconomics, gender, geography, but also generation. And in fact, there is an explicit mandate in the New Mexico Green Amendment language, which is one of the essential criteria of the most effective green amendments, is that the states must protect the natural, or the government officials in the state must protect the natural resources of the state for present and future generations. That generational protection is explicitly included in the Green Amendment language in New Mexico and many other states. And it is one of the reasons why this Green Amendment approach resonates so powerfully with young people, because they do see, you know, this entitlement to a clean, safe, and healthy environment as essential for them, but they can also see the very clear respect for their rights to have a healthy future when it comes to the environment, because it's right there in the language. So it's powerful and it's important. And it's, again, it's one of the reasons why it resonates so well with young people.
So I don't really understand exactly where everything stands right now. As you know, we're in the middle of a 60-day legislative session in New Mexico, and I know that there's been certain environmental bills passed. Back in the day when I worked for New Mexico PIRG, we helped to pass the Clean Water Act, the Oil Recycling Act, Tire Recycling Act, and we worked on the bottle bill for years, which never got passed. But is there language in the New Mexico Constitution towards a green amendment, or have you been visiting New Mexico and working with people here to introduce that language? And how is that introduced? Is it brought to the governor? Is it introduced in a bill in both chambers of the legislature, or what exactly?
So what we have now is there is proposed language that has been put forth in both the House and the Senate. And on the House, it's called House Joint Resolution 4, HJR 4. And on the Senate side, it's Senate Joint Resolution 6. SJR 6. The language in both houses is parallel. And the idea was that this is of such paramount importance to the people of New Mexico that the legislators who are championing it really wanted to make sure that we had the best chance possible that it would be heard and advance all the way through the process in this current legislative session. So there is actual language, and if people go to nmgreenamendment.org, there's a whole website. They can find the language, find the proposal. At this point, we are still awaiting a hearing. And of course, I think as people have come to learn about the democratic process in New Mexico and anywhere here in the US, that in order for the most powerful, important, protective items of law to come to fruition, you have to first have committee hearings and committee votes so that it can get through the process. And in the absence of a hearing, you're kind of stuck. We did just learn that the Senate the Senate Rules Committee, the chair, Senator Duhigg, has committed to scheduling a hearing before the Senate Rules Committee. Exactly when that hearing will be, we don't yet know, but at least we've been promised that critical first step. And so that's really wonderful. And we're going to be looking forward to that. And we hope, again, people go to nmgreenamendment.org. That's where you'll be able to find out what's happening, when those hearings will be, how you can get on this very dynamic app that we have, this white label app dedicated to the New Mexico Green Amendment movement. Now, in order for it to ultimately get through the process, really all we need, but we do need this, is that we need both legislative houses, right? The House and the Senate, the legislators to vote in support of the proposed Green Amendment language by majority vote in each house. Once that happens, the amendment will then go before the people for a vote of the people. There actually is no official role for the governor, but certainly her support for the New Mexico Green Amendment and her recognition that this would really be a powerful addition to her legacy, her environmental legacy as governor, is very valuable. And we would appreciate having that support. But in terms of an official role, she can't veto it, for example. It goes from legislators to people.
Okay, so once the resolutions are passed, if they are passed, how do we really put teeth in this? And what are the next steps after this to enforce this or ensure this?
Well, one of the most beautiful things about a Green Amendment, it's one of the key criteria, is it has to be placed in the Bill of Rights section of the Constitution and written using language that makes it what we call in the law self-executing, meaning it is enforceable in its own right. So as soon as this language gets passed through the legislative process and through a vote of the people and gets added to the Constitution, it immediately has power, strength, and enforceability. And it can be used to support good government action that will better protect the environment, but it can also be used to hold government accountable when they behave in ways that allow for an infringement on the rights of the people to their now constitutional right to a clean, safe, and healthy environment. In other states, what that has meant is when legislators passed laws that would infringe on the constitutional rights of the people to, in Pennsylvania, the language is pure water, clean air, and a healthy environment, then those provisions of the law that resulted in that infringement, those provisions were deemed unconstitutional and they couldn't be enforced. When permits were issued to dangerous industrial gold mining operations in remote natural areas that would have had serious implications for the environment, for community safety, for good economic development, that in Montana is very closely related to healthy environments. When those permits were deemed to result in an unconstitutional infringement of the rights of the people, those permits themselves were voided until the legislator could fix it and find a way to grant the permit and protect environmental rights at the same time, which, by the way, they never reissued the permit. So what does that tell you? We've also utilized the amendment in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania when Pennsylvania government officials were really refusing to enforce existing laws that mandated the cleanup of a supersaturated toxic site. We were able to use our advocacy and use legal action to get the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection to hold responsible parties accountable for cleaning up this long ignored toxic site. Those are just 3 examples of how a Green Amendment, once added to the Constitution, can be used by we the people through advocacy and, when necessary, through legal action to secure essential governmental protections of our environment and environmental rights.
Wow, great. Well, we're in a pretty good position right now. Our legislature is mostly blue, and our governor says that she's environmentally concerned. She's faced critics for being a little bit too beholden to the Permian Basin interests in oil and gas, and she has entertained the blue and green hydrogen technology. And New Mexico definitely needs all the help it can get. We have some great people in Washington. We have Deb Haaland, our Secretary of the Interior, that is very concerned about environmental racism and how it affects the reservations and pueblos. Our congressperson from the north, Teresa Ledger Hernandez, is like an acequia master, so she is very aware and concerned, and has probably worked half of her life towards clean water and accessible water in New Mexico, if we have any water. And as you know, New Mexico is rife with environmental concerns, all the way from the original Manhattan Project, uranium mining, copper mining, this, that, and the other thing. And just to give you a short little story, it's like, and you kind of reminded me of this lady. I was going like, is she the Aaron Brockovich of the Delaware River. When I worked for New Mexico PIRG back in 1990, I helped organize the 20th anniversary of Earth Day here, and we brought Lois Gibbs in from New York, the Love Canal lady, and then we said, "Oh, you think you got environmental problems here?" And we showed her the South Valley with like 3 Superfund sites, and then we looked up at the foothills and said, "Well, do you know what's going on up at that base?" Well, there's a big jet fuel spill that's messing with our groundwater, and there's a little uranium leak that's leaking down the arroyos to the South Valley. And you see those little gumdrop hills up there? There's like over 2,000 disarmed nuclear weapons up there. So and you probably know about Hobart and trying to bring in the nation's nuclear waste here. And so we need all the help we can get. And Elaine and I, in Common Ground Rising, did a series on air quality here, and our air quality is a lot more messed up than people would like to admit. So yeah, we need all the help we can get. And we're also in the middle of doing environmental legislative programs and encouraging our members and our audience to go to legis.gov to track bills and resolutions, and to call the legislative hotline. So what you're indicating is that we should all get a hold of all of our senators and reps and say, yes, we definitely endorse the Green Amendment.
Yes, and I think that there are a couple of things they should say. We need your support for our right as people, our inalienable human right to a clean, safe, and healthy environment here in the state of New Mexico. And we want you to support, to be a champion of the Green Amendment. And if you're not already a sponsor, to sponsor it. We try to list all those who have signed on in sponsorship at nmgreenamendment.org. So you should be able to find them and know whether you need to say thank you or encourage them to act as sponsors. But we also need them to urge hearing swiftly. As we all know, right, it really matters whether or not something can get through the whole legislative process. Depends on timing. And we are already, 3 weeks through the legislative session, and we haven't had a hearing yet. So we need a hearing ASAP. So that's sort of the next ask. And I would suggest that the final ask that people want to consider is really one of democracy. I mean, the truth is, if the New Mexico legislators vote in support of the New Mexico Green Amendment proposal, they are not actually themselves amending the Constitution of New Mexico. What they are actually doing is supporting the right of the people to decide whether or not the people of New Mexico want their state constitution to be amended to include these powerful, important environmental rights. Because at its core, the Constitution is the document by, for, of the people. It is the people of New Mexico telling the government officials of New Mexico, we are giving you power to govern over us. But when you engage in that government action, here are the rules of the road. We're laying them out in the Constitution. And in the Bill of Rights section of the Constitution, we are saying there are these inalienable human rights, these human rights, political rights, right, civil rights that we hold dear. When you are governing, you may not behave in a way that infringes on these rights. We're not giving you more power. We're limiting your power as government officials, saying you may not infringe on these fundamental rights. And the Green Amendment would just be adding environmental rights to that limitation on government authority. But it really should be up to the people in New Mexico to decide whether or not they want to amend their constitution to include this in the rules of the road, because again, the Constitution belongs to the people. So that's really what the people are asking for. They're asking their government officials to support their rights as humans here on this earth to clean water, clean air, healthy soils, right? Thriving ecosystems, healthy environment, stable climate. But fundamentally at its core, they're asking their government officials to give the people of New Mexico the right to decide about their constitution and what it does or does not include.
Wow. Well, you've been very busy. I sort of see that you've been popping in and out of New Mexico and working with different groups here. We've done a lot of work for a long time with Retake Our Democracy, and I see that you're planning on visiting with Indivisible, Albuquerque, and League of Women Voters. And maybe I'm a little bit confused about that, but let's say this joint resolution goes to its hearing and passed. Did you say that it needs to be put on the statewide ballot?
Yes, so it needs to pass by majority majority vote in both of the legislative houses, right? The House and the Senate. And then it has to be passed by a majority vote of the people.
And do you know how long that process takes once it's passed? Would it be on in the next during the next election?
Yes, and I mean, as soon as the amendment passes, it then in the following year, if that's your question, in the following year, right, it gets added to the Constitution. So for example, in the state of New York, they passed their New York Green Amendment by over 70% of the vote in November of 2021, and it automatically then got added to the Constitution in January of 2022. But New Mexico, you know, really is very lucky in how their amendment process works. A lot of other states, you have to pass it through 2 consecutive legislatures, not consecutive years, like entirely newly elected legislatures. Or if it's by a vote once, it has to pass by a super majority, like a 3/5 majority. So, you know, everywhere across the nation, state constitutional amendments are very accessible, and they actually happen with regularity. And it's one of the reasons why I've structured my Green Amendment movement to start at the state level, because we can get this powerful protection state by state by state in the near term. And while we're doing that, we're laying the foundation necessary to get, you know, that foundation of understanding and support necessary to get a federal green amendment, because we need amendments at both levels of government, right? The states have a lot of power when it comes to the environment. The federal government has a lot of power when it comes to the environment. We need government officials at both levels of government held accountable for protecting our environmental rights, which means we need constitutional amendments at both levels. But here in New Mexico, and we have green amendment proposals, so people know, in nearly a dozen other states, with organizing at the grassroots level happening in about half a dozen other states. But New Mexico really has the potential to be at the forefront of the movement. I mean, New Mexico could be the 4th state in the nation to get this constitutional recognition and protection of the environmental rights of the people. And in so doing, not only get this powerful protection in the near term, but really serve as an inspiration to other states who recognize the need for this additional environmental protection and for the transformational pathway that a green amendment is. I mean, it really transforms our system of government. Right now, environmental laws in New Mexico, everywhere in the US, are about legalizing pollution and degradation through reviews and permits, not about prevention of harm. A green amendment refocuses government on the prevention of harm path first. And that's essential and requires every government official at every level of government to be focused on protecting environmental rights and natural resources for present and future generations. It's truly transformational. And it really is at the fingertips of the people of New Mexico in this current legislative session. If you can get hearings, speak up, and get your legislators to support your having the right to decide.
No. Well, we're starting to wind down a little bit, but I don't mean to put you on the spot, but we've been talking in the last couple of programs about smart meters, and some people think it's pie in the sky and sort of conspiracy. Other people have done all this research and say it can affect the environment outside the meter. If it's placed near a bedroom or whatever, it can mess with the human brain and human health. And the reason I'm saying this is that we're recording this on Tuesday, and as of this Tuesday, the 7th, they're introducing smart meter legislation through the Public Regulation Commission. How do you feel about this? It seems to most people that it's a little bit out of the environmental scope, but if it affects animals and human health, we've got to be concerned about that.
Well, we
I-
always
I-
want to be concerned, right, for things that affect animals and human health. But I have to say, I have to be honest, I do not have the level of knowledge necessary to have an opinion on your question. And if I'm nothing else, well, I'm a lot of things, but one of the things I am is always forthright and truthful.
Okay, let me change the subject a little bit. Now, your book is the same title as your webpage. It's Green Amendments for the Generations. Is that right?
Yeah, so actually I wrote the book first. There are two editions. The second edition just came out November 1. And actually there's a lot in New Mexico in the book, and it's called The Green Amendment, The People's Fight for a Clean, Safe, and Healthy Environment. And in fact, and I'm going to look it up, I am doing a talk in Santa Fe next week at Collected Works on Galisteo Street in Santa Fe, for anybody who's interested in hearing me talk about the book. But again, it's the Green Amendment, the People's Fight for a Clean, Safe, and Healthy Environment. And that term Green Amendment really resonated with people. And so as I went forth doing my work, you know, I named the organization Green Amendments for the Generations. And we talk about now, I talk about these special constitutional amendments that have these critical qualities that are so essential for effectiveness. I call them green amendments. So everything sort of uses that green amendment terminology because it resonates with people. And it's a way of distinguishing what kind of amendment I'm talking about. The truth is, there are a lot of environmental rights amendments in state constitutions across the nation, but they haven't changed anything when it comes to environmental protection because they don't meet the critical criteria of a green amendment, which literally, again, gives environmental rights that highest constitutional standing. Other language is pretty, it sounds nice, but it's declared to be just policy, or it's in the miscellaneous section of the Constitution. It gives all the power to the legislators, not to the people. And those are essential fundamental differences between environmental rights language and a truly effective environmental rights amendment, which is a green amendment.
Well, I we probably need to have you on another program so you can talk about the work you've done with the Delaware watershed. Just for your information, I think it was back in 76 through 75 through 78 or something like that. My dad was very high up in the GAF Corporation, and he was entrusted by that corporation and two other major chemical polluters back in the Pete Seeger Clean Up the Hudson campaign to get their discharge into the Hudson River to as close to zero as possible. And he was successful with that. So I was really proud of him for that work. What in a nutshell, since we only have about 5 minutes left, can you sort of tell our viewers exactly what your work entailed and what you accomplished with the Delaware watershed?
Yeah. So I've had the honor of being the Delaware Riverkeeper for 30 years now. And I am literally, my job title is to be the voice of the Delaware River and to make sure that anytime anybody, anywhere wants to harm or help the river, including its tributary streams or any of the, ecosystems within its watershed, because the health of the Delaware River is dependent on the health of its watershed. My job is to make sure that the needs of the river are not just heard and understood, but are given the highest level of protection possible in all decision-making and actions within the watershed. But of course, protecting a river as large as the Delaware is not the job of one person. It is a job of a community. And so I have an organization, the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, which is made up of a beautiful staff of nearly 24 and tens of thousands of people, all throughout the Delaware River watershed, which includes portions of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. And we all work together to advocate for, and when necessary, litigate for the protection of the Delaware River and its entire watershed.
Well, I'm sure the Delaware River is a lot cleaner than the last time I went water skiing, which was like 75. And when I fell off the rope and was waiting for the boat, I think a couple of oil slicks, some dead fish and plastic went by me. And I know a lot of stuff back east that used to kill us has been cleaned up, and nuclear energy helped a lot with that. Yeah, you've got a lot of, you've done a lot of work. You got a lot of work to do. New Mexicans, get engaged with this. Call your state reps and senators. Support the Green Amendment. And we're about out of time. Is there anything you'd like to add, Maya?
No, I just thank you so much for the honor of being here and the opportunity to share with people this powerful message.
Okay. Thanks for being with us on that Saturday show. And coming up is probably about 4 poems and a couple of songs. You may see a poem by me, by Benjamin Borman, by Manuel Gonzalez and Bill Nevin. And we'll see you next week on that Saturday show. And again, thanks very much for taking time out of your very busy schedule, Maya.
Thank you.
Smells, it affects your lungs, affects kids. My grandkids have asthma.
You really don't even want to be outside on humid days when it's smoky. You cough, your chest hurt, and I really don't want that for my child.
In the neighborhood, you have playgrounds, and those areas are right in the shadows of industry.
Southwest Detroit is a diverse community. Southwest Detroit is a vibrant community, but it's also very contaminated.
Like a stout heart within the city is Detroit industry.
I am Teresa Landrum. I'm from Southwest Detroit, 48217. This area here is predominantly African American.
48217 Detroit is known as the state of Michigan's most polluted zip code, has dozens of heavy polluting industries. One of the ones that people notice the most, of course, coming down I-75, looks like another city. It is Marathon. It's the only refinery in the state of Michigan. It produces hundreds of thousands of barrels of oil every week.
Marathon Oil is surrounded by 55 other smokestacks. Steel production, automotive production. We have coal-fired power generation in this community, not to mention the northern border's busiest international crossing, bringing tens of thousands of trucks daily.
I live within walking distance of every one of the industries, and sometimes I'll say, you know what, on a good day I'll throw a rock and I can hit them.
Areas that are proximate to large sources of air pollutants bear a disproportionate burden of disease. We have studies that show that across the United States, minority communities have more exposures to air pollution.
Environmental racism is the fact that disproportionately all over the United States, Black, Latinx, Indigenous people suffered from toxic contamination, from air pollution, lack of access to healthy and fresh drinking water.
I think the environmental justice movement is probably more closely rooted to the civil rights movement than the environmental movement. The environmental movement, historically has been about conservation, has been about protecting and preserving wildlife. The environmental justice movement is more deeply rooted in human rights. So access to clean air, access to clean water, the right to live in an environment that's healthy.
This is not unique to Detroit. When you start to look at race, when you start to look at income, and you start to layer who is dealing with the hundreds of years of industrial contamination, you can see pockets all over Michigan of Black, Indigenous, Latinx communities who are suffering with that burden.
Flint has been a huge game changer, both in Michigan and nationally. In the Democratic presidential debates in 2019, Flint and environmental justice came up quite often. Just about every candidate issued a plan, an environmental justice plan.
It's inspired the whole nation.
There's hundreds of Flints all across America.
The president announced in the infrastructure plan, we're going to remove all lead pipes in the country. And that, I don't think, happens without the Flint water crisis and also the activism of Flint residents.
This area was a mecca for Black people. Our families migrated here, and this is the first area that African Americans could come and buy homes. We had everything we needed here, not knowing that this area would have an adverse impact on our health.
When the Great Migration really started and Ford's famous $5 a day wages brought people to Detroit, it was racism that directed people to certain neighborhoods.
In the 1930s, they were redlined, which means that it was difficult to get loans and attract investments in the redlined areas. And so what you basically have wound up with all around the country are communities that were segregated, concentrated, and disinvested in. And that was all public policy. In the 1960s, we had the civil rights laws, which were supposed to end all that. In many ways, the damage was already done. The segregated neighborhoods, are already here. Those same neighborhoods got zoned for mixed and industrial uses.
You see how massive it is. This didn't used to be here when I was a kid. As I-75 was being built, Marathon was buying up property after property. I-75 is the center of our zip code 48217. It devastated the community because we had a loss of families, we had a loss of homes, and it brought along with it pollution. We still have that family camaraderie, but over the years, we've seen a lot of our residents die from various diseases. Both my parents passed away from complications of cancer, and I'm a cancer survivor.
There's very good evidence that the types of air pollutants that are emitted and to which people are exposed in Southwest Detroit are linked to increased risk of asthma exacerbations. So that means more asthma events where people are having trouble breathing, may need to go to the emergency room. There's also very good evidence that the types of pollutants that are common in Southwest Detroit are linked to increased cancer risk and to increased cardiovascular and pulmonary adverse health outcomes and also excess mortality.
I live in this neighborhood because this is all I know. If they would come and drop a whole bunch of money in my lap, I'm sure I would move. But why not buy out the whole area, 3-mile radius, something that can offset the pollution?
We have information that this is harming people's health now. These external factors such as air pollution or climate greenhouse gases, we can do something about that. And we have a responsibility to use the science to promote health for everyone.
Just because you don't live in a toxic environment or in a community that is, has air pollution or water contamination doesn't mean it's not your problem. The United Nations has given us 10 years to figure out the problem of climate change and totally transform our economy. Environmental justice communities are just the canary in the coal mine.
With changes that are anticipated with climate change and other issues, we can anticipate that we will be seeing more of those adverse health effects. And so attention to this issue is absolutely needed and timely.
We need laws. We need the force of law. We need to hold individuals accountable as well as public agencies.
We need health in all policies. We need new tools like health impact assessments or cumulative environmental risk assessments.
No longer will economically disadvantaged areas of our state be dumping grounds.
So that we're not simply saying, well, this is a new pollutant that'll be emitted, it's okay because they're still underneath the limit, without considering that there's already several other pollutants that are being released into the air and water of our communities. This is going to be really life-saving legislation.
The momentum is picked up. We're at a very good spot in terms of the number of people who are getting educated, the number of people who are interested in getting involved in environmental justice issues. I think we're also at a very critical time where there's a window, there's an opportunity that we have to seize.
This is the time. There's been this awareness for a long time and a lot of frustration that more progress hasn't been made.
We all have to become allies to work to be good stewards to protect Mother Earth, because we don't have anything else. We still haven't got that colony on the moon. Elon Musk, they haven't got it, so you can't go anywhere. I can't go anywhere. If the world is so polluted, where can anybody go?
I want to dedicate this reading to our dear friend Alan Cooper, who is resting up in the VA hospital right now. He's catching his second wind. Mira Masaya, querido camarada, seguimos adelante a través de la niebla fascista. Hasta la victoria siempre, mi comandante. First poem. Utah Phillips for the IWW. That soldier fighting mad, dead, drunk, in tatters from another awful war woke up in Amon's good school where he found peace, telling us his stories as we laughed, cried, cursed, and rose up out of our comfort zones, shouting, "Revolution! You gotta mess with people," he yelled. Wheels turning, rails rattling, rebels wobbling. "You're either a worker or you're a boss, brother," he said as we drove down Albuquerque's Central Avenue through Nob Hill towards the International War Zone. Don't let the bosses cut you off from your allies. Don't call them yuppies. They're workers too. And so I learned solidarity from Utah Phillips, who shared his Folk Alliance Conference hotel room with a half-dozen real hobos, happily bubbling mulligan stew with green chile, singing dreams of Joe Hill that night. In his Jimmy Hoffa work shirt, long white hair streaming free, smiling, telling stories, singing songs of freedom, as he did with Ani DeFranco, as he did on that New Mexico concert stage, as he did in your kitchen, as he did in that caboose in the Vermont woods, on the radio, on records, as he always did, as he always did. Dump the bosses off your backs, one mighty union. Soon come. Yeah, Utah Phillips was a friend of mine. He died out on the road. But if you look hard inside you, you'll see he's alive as you and me. Nobody weep, nobody mourn. Just organize and practice your song for that wild workers' party that we're going to throw to greet the coming red dawn.
Okay, so I am really excited to get to share this piece. It is a piece that I love to do in every space that I'm in, every time I have an opportunity. And I know that COVID and being back in the world has been a real struggle for a lot of us. So this is kind of just a little prayer for you, for me. If you're struggling, we want you here. And this is a poem about that. And it's called Lent. It starts with a song you might know. Somebody says you got a new friend. Does she love you better than I can? There's a big black sky over my town. I know where you're at, I bet she's around. I'm in the corner, watching you kiss her. On the first Sunday of Lent, Pastor Judy says to come to the front if the Spirit moves you, if you're looking for healing. So I move, and my forehead is anointed with oil, and I have bangs, so my hair is just greasy now. And I wonder if Jesus' hair was greasy. Maybe that's why he was so holy and shiny all the time. I make this joke whenever I go to church with my family about how none of it really applies to me because I'm a witch. It's not a joke. I went to the Colorado River looking for Yemaya when I moved. Set up my altar with De La Rosa Mazapan and candles for Selena, Frida Kahlo, and Barbara Streisand. I am the Femtecostal congregation at my own Chicana church. As I'm waiting in line to be healed, I become acutely aware that I have forgotten how to pray. Lost in the sunken sad of myself, my therapist says I am a dark room searching for a flashlight. My other therapist says to remember the Mermaid magazine cover of me. The holiest thing I can think of is the fact that I woke up this morning, scrolled the Bible of Instagram makeup tutorial, and painted myself into parable. Blessed be my chrome blue hoops, vintage denim with all the patches, choosing the Bowie platforms over slip-ons. Blessed be my side shave, nose rings, weird tattoos. Blessed be my breath, choosing when to be poem and love song and joke. Blessed be my brave breath, choosing to steady when I am assaulted out of my own hometown. Blessed be my brave breath when my lover turned to alcohol and anger. The holiest thing I can think of is the fact that I woke up this morning. Blessed be my brave breath when I am forsaken, but get back up anyway, love anyway, fight anyway. Blessed be my brave breath when I do not want to breathe. Unlovable sin, collapsed on the floor in ideation. The holiest thing I can think of is the fact that I am still alive, sparkling and spicy as ever, flexing on the past like a sorry bad boyfriend. Blessed be my brave breath when I get up behind the mic, when I am bullied but try again anyway, when I suture my scars into more than enough. Blessed be a prayer that says, you did not break me, you will not break me. I am so alive. Blessed be a prayer that says, I will wake up tomorrow. I have so much to do. Not done here. Blessed be my small cat. Blessed be my fear. Blessed be my ache. Blessed be the glow up that follows the nights I nickname myself Moon. The hundreds of people in the audience listening. The holiest thing I can think of is the fact that I am still alive. And that is so much more than enough. Amen. Amen. Amen.
My name is Doug, and we are the Dying, and we're excited to show you what we've been working on for the last couple months. Donna, what do you do when heaven sends light to you? The bells are ringing me out of my mind. Oh, you say it's a lovely space to joy and death and decay. Oh, I got tears in my eyes, 'cause I got time. We had time. Know what's wrong, and the search for what is right. 'Cause I got time, and you got time to see what's good and fight for what is right. Oh, and I've been begging them to slow, but there's nothing there can't quite go right. Oh, I know it seems okay, and I know that I am something afraid of everything that's happening in this life we got. So tick tock, everyone stand. Take a quick look at what's in your hand. Some say I'm old-fashioned, but I say it's a beast. 'Cause I got time, and we got time to know what is wrong and to fight for what is right. 'Cause I got time, and you got time to see what's good and know what is so right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Ooh. We're all on the border of delirium. We spent a lot of time in the studio today playing that song again and again and again. And you might have noticed we still fucked it up a little bit. All right.
I'm going to tell you guys a story, you know, and this is just a story about something that happened when I go down to the river. I like to go down there and I read my book, and one day it got windy, and I wrote a poem about it. So this is it's kind of like a story, you know, but it's a poem. It's time to begin. It's time to begin the story of the poet and the wind. Now the poet went to the river one day to sit and talk to the river and pray. The trees were happy to see him with their leaves red, brown, and gold, because fall was falling fast and things were beginning to get cold. So the poet gave respect to the river, respect to the sky, and respect to the earth. The four directions and inner reflections as to why he was given his birth. When all of a sudden the poet heard leaves rustling, and he knew that it must have been the wind. And he knew that the wind always blew right through him. So he packed up his things to go home. Now the wind was from the north, powerful and strong, and the breeze made the trees howl and sing the wind's song. So the poet started stepping, but the wind gave chase, and it kicked up dust and right up into the poet's face. And the poet, he wasn't going to stand for this disgrace. So the poet did the craziest thing you'd ever see. The poet battled the wind with poetry, and the wind got crazy and it started to gust. And the poet raised his head and he started to bust about Earth's pollution and mind evolution and how you can kill the revolutionary, but you can't kill the revolution. And just when it looked like the poet was winning, the wind began to gather and it started spinning, and it knocked that poet blind, because the wind is a warrior just as old as time. Came at that poet so hard that it blew the poet's mind. So he started reaching for metaphor, searching for simile, digging deep inside himself for the capability of seeing beauty in everything. And his heart began bursting and blooming, and he spoke of love and life and his emotions inside. But then the wind came at him like an ocean tide, and it knocked that poet right off of his feet. But that poet, he wasn't that easily beat. He got right back up and started his expression, making each and every word a personal confession. The poet tried to find all the prose he could muster, but the wind was blowing hard and it started to bluster, and the clouds came to help him and they darkened the sky. But the poet kept speaking and he let his spirit fly, and he pummeled the wind with prose. But the warrior wind, it got stronger and rose. It came at him from the front, it came at him from the rear. It threw the poet, rocked the poet, knocked the poet, tossed the poet. But it tasted the poet's tears. So the poet cried out for justice, and he called upon his ancestors. He used every poetic technique he could remember, defining his culture and finding his consciousness. He let those words flow till he was out of breath. He had nothing left. But then he realized something, and he didn't know what to do, because he saw that the wind had died down too. See, neither of them was stronger than the other. Both of them warriors. Both of them brothers. They had stood eye to eye, toe to toe. But they no longer look at the other as a foe. And that's where the story must end. Both having respect for their newfound friend, the wondrous tale of the poet and the wind. Thank you.
I wrote this back in the early 80s when I was a prolific poet on the university circuit. This is called The Truth Is You. Doors of fear slammed tight, man hiding from himself. There is no need to imagine how it can be, for seen from space and consciousness, there is only one reality, truth. Borders and religions merely serve as temporary screens. The only thing we truly fear is fear. Day-to-day life is a personal philosophical journey that all must experience and from which none can hide. But we try. Oh, how we try. Government is nothing but strong-arm propaganda. Although its lies appear to uphold the law, it is not designed for the good of the whole. Only those with money, those who seek salvation and faith, only do so out of fear and lack of faith in themselves. Fear of impending Holocaust is humanity's guise upon its image, and one of government's prime excuses to justify its existence. It throws the poor in the direct line of fire and takes 25% from all to build bombs in the name of peace. Just as the old priests required tribute and sacrifice to still the angry wrath of the gods, for fear that the truth might appear and that we might question the necessity of rules. Clothes serve as a placebo of man's reality. We pretend and won't accept what is given, reinforcing jealousy. Deep down inside, we are naked in this reality, naked and ashamed and not knowing what to do. Doors, walls, bombs, borders, religion, and clothes will never spare a man from being truly seen. The spiritual network is all that has ever held us together. They know this too as they lock us in shackles of fear, to blind us of its absolute beauty. And its absolute beauty has always been you.
Until the next time, it's time to say goodbye. When you out here in the streets, keep it real, 505. We love everybody, we just want to let you know. Thanks for tuning in to that Saturday show.